All right, well, we're here today. My name's Miss Jessica, and I'm the educational coordinator for the 4-H Children's Garden. And we're here in the butterfly garden today to answer your butterfly questions. You guys came up with some excellent questions, so let's see.
Hey, I'm Maya, and I'm 9 years old, and I wonder why butterflies pollinate.
Butterflies have to have nectar from flowers in order to live. They, in their whole adult lives, only ever drink nectar. And so while they're at the flowers, they get pollen on their body, and then that pollen is spread from flower to flower. And so they don't pollinate on purpose. It's actually by accident that while they're at the flower, pollen gets on their body.
Hi, I'm Chelsea and I'm 10 years old, and I was wondering, how do butterflies see?
The question was, how do butterflies see? Well, butterflies are insects, and all insects see with a special kind of eyes called compound eyes. And what that means is instead of having 2 eyes like we do, butterflies have thousands of eyes. And so if they were in the butterfly garden today looking at a flower, they would not see what we would see. They would see thousands of flowers. And so they use their compound eyes to see.
Hi, I'm Chelsea and I'm 10 years old, and I was wondering, are there pollinators on every continent?
And there are butterflies on every continent except one. Can you guess which one? Yep, Antarctica. And the reason there's no butterflies on the continent of Antarctica is because there's no flowers there. And butterflies have to have flowers in order to get their food. So that was a really good question.
Miles, I'm almost 7 years old. I wonder, where do butterflies go in the winter?
Butterflies overwinter in every stage of the life cycle. So from eggs to caterpillars to chrysalis adults, they spend the winter months in one of those stages. So the butterfly, like a monarch butterfly, that butterfly overwinters as an adult and it migrates. And so that means that it leaves Michigan or somewhere in the north and goes to Mexico. But other butterflies, like the Carner blue, that butterfly overwinters in its larva stage, and it's a larva for 240 days. So yeah, lots of different types of butterflies have different types of overwintering stages.
So some other questions that you had.
Hi, I'm Max, and I'm 6. How many different types of butterflies are there?
And if you go around the world, let's take a trip around the world. There are 17,500 different kinds of butterflies, from great big ones that are almost a foot across to little tiny ones that are only about a half an inch across. In the United States, there are about 750 different kinds of butterflies. You'll find them in every single state, and a lot of them live in a number of states. So when you're out and around, if you're traveling, look for butterflies.
Hi, I'm Lucy and I'm 8. How big is the smallest butterfly?
Smallest butterfly is, and that is called a western pygmy blue. And that butterfly, from wingtip to wingtip, is all of a half an inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch. That's pretty small. I've seen mosquitoes in Michigan that are almost that big. In Michigan, we have one butterfly that is a very small butterfly. It's also endangered. It's called a Carner blue, and it's only about an inch across. So if you ever see one, just look at it. Don't mess with it. It's endangered. Much of its habitat is being destroyed, and so we would love to see more Carner blues.
Hi, I'm Lucy and I'm 8. Can butterflies see ultraviolet light like bees can?
It turns out that yes, they can, much like bees. And so they see the garden. Number one, they have compound eyes, and then they can also see, number two, they can see ultraviolet light. So they see the garden very different than what we do, and they can see some things that we can't see. And sometimes you see flowers that have stripes on them, and sometimes that acts like a guiding light or guiding lines for butterflies to know where to go. So yes, they can see ultraviolet light. Butterflies go, and that's kind of like the question of, are butterflies on every planet? or every continent. And butterflies can go as far north as there are flowers, and they can go as far south as there are flowers. So if there are flowers, there's probably butterflies around. So if you're in a place with flowers, take a few minutes to just kind of step back, look around, and see if you see any flowers. I just saw back behind there a white butterfly flying, but it just took off.
You guys had some questions about bees, and so today we're here in the garden by our honeybee hive. And the bees in this hive are busy out collecting pollen and nectar. And right now there's probably between 75 and 100,000 bees inside of our hive. And I know you're thinking, oh my gosh, how could you be standing so close to that hive? Well, the bees are busy and they really don't even know that I'm here as long as I'm not threatening them or trying to hurt them. They're just going to go about their business. And so we thought we'd answer some of your bee questions up here by the beehive.
I'm Miles. I'm almost 7 years old. I wonder why. Why do bees have yellow and black stripes?
Black stripes? Well, the yellow and black is to warn predators that that animal could sting. And so predators like humans or other animals, when they see the yellow and black, they stay away because they know that that animal can sting. And so that's a warning sign for other predators.
I'm gonna have. How do bees get pollen?
Honeybees eat pollen. Not all pollinators actually eat pollen, but honeybees do. And so while they're at the flower collecting nectar, they also gather pollen. And they put it in the pollen baskets on their hind legs so they can carry it back to the hive. The bees that are flying into our hive today have some bright yellow pollen on their legs. And so whichever flower that they're visiting, they're gathering that bright yellow pollen. Pollen comes in many different colors. I've seen white pollen, I've even seen blue pollen, and so it's kind of interesting to watch the bees as they come in to see what different colored pollen they're bringing.
Hi, I'm Clara, and I'm 8 years old. Besides bees and butterflies, what other creatures pollinate?
Lots of animals out there that help with the plant life cycle. Things like bats, hummingbirds, moths, flies. Lots of different animals visit flowers for nectar or pollen. So those types of animals would be looking for different types of flowers than maybe a honeybee would. But they're all doing that very important job of moving pollen.
Hi, I'm gonna have. What's the difference about bees and bats pollinate?
Pollinate. Well, the difference is the types of flowers that they're drawn to. Bats are out at night, and so they are going to be looking for flowers that have a really musky smell, also flowers that are white, that are easy for them to see. And honeybees are out during the day, and they're looking for flowers that are brightly colored, also looking for flowers that have a landing pad so they can sit and drink the nectar, and also so they can gather the pollen. So those are all really good questions about bees and other pollinators.
So there are a few other questions that were asked, and one of them is,
Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm 7 years old. I wonder what pollen is.
well, pollen is a part of the flower. If you go and look at a flower and look down into the flower, you'll see that there are a part in there that's called an anther, and on the anther is pollen. And they're pollen grains. And so if you touch them, they'll come off as little individuals. They're smaller than like a grain of sand. Some of them are almost like dust. Many times they're yellow. That's the most common, sometimes white. And so look down into a flower and you will see that is the pollen. And the pollen is there so that the pollen can go from one flower to another flower, and when it goes from one flower to another flower and lands on what's called the stigma, it will pollinate that flower, and then that flower can produce seeds, and then there will be seeds for more plants the next year. So it's how a plant makes sure that it continues to live. Even though it's going to die in the winter, it produces seeds that can be grown the next year.
Hi, I'm Clara, and I'm 8 years old. What plants need to be pollinated? What other types of pollination are there?
And all plants need to be pollinated, but the ones that need a pollinator, so a honeybee or a hummingbird or a bat or a moth or something like that, butterfly. Those are about 75% of the world's food crops. So 3 out of 4 food crops need to be pollinated by a pollinator. Plants that don't need a pollinator are pollinated by the wind. The wind just blows the pollen all over. And what would happen if plants, or if pollinators stopped pollinating? Ooh, that would be a bad thing. Because what would happen is the plants could not produce seeds. They would not produce fruit. If there were no seeds, then there would be eventually no more plants. If there were no fruit, that would affect us a lot, because much of what we eat from plants is the fruits. So imagine there wouldn't be any strawberries, there wouldn't be any grapes, there wouldn't be any apples, pears, peaches. It'd be a bad situation. So if you see pollinators, if you see bees out pollinating, don't be scared of them. Don't try to kill them. Be very happy that they're there, and show somebody else, say, look, this bee is busy here working, pollinating, and that's what we need.